I want to start by saying this, in case you just kind of closed this video after a few seconds. Chris Houlihan is real. His name is in the Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past because his father won the War Mech Challenge, a special bonus contest, in the September-October 1990 issue of Nintendo Power. Over the last several years, I've noticed, again and again, that people keep making websites and YouTube videos about Chris Houlihan, and they generally come to the conclusion that he's fictional, with no evidence to back this claim up. These videos and articles and forum posts just say that there is no Chris Houlihan. These folks are wrong. He's real. I've met him. This video won't be particularly long, but I have to tell the story. I have to tell you about Chris Houlihan and how his name got into A Link to the Past. This isn't really a story about me, but it kind of is about me, and it's going to have to be more about me than him since, well, you're not going to see Chris Houlihan in this video or hear from him. I won't show a picture of the guy. See, I'm not going to dox him. His name is Chris Houlihan, but when I talk with him, he didn't seem like he cared much about his fame. So I just want him to have a little, like a life where people aren't hounding him from the internet all the time. Sorry. Instead, this video will be a story about me and that time that my mom discovered who Chris Houlihan was and how she got the proof. I'm going to split this video into 3 parts. The first part will kind of get everyone up to speed on why Zelda fans know the name Chris Houlihan in the first place. It's the part you've probably heard before, and you can skip it if you don't need the history lesson. The second part is the story about how I met Chris Houlihan and was skeptical about him being the Chris Houlihan. And the third part is the proof. Or maybe it's just the evidence. It's just the part where you get to decide if I'm full of it. I'm not full of it. If this is a hoax, it's a very well-researched hoax, to be honest. And I wouldn't make a video about a hoax or perpetuate a hoax since that's kind of lame. Why would I do that? YouTube is not going to make me rich or famous. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make this video and people will still make their own Chris Houlihan is fake exposés. I just need to put this all out there in case someone does watch this, because if I can convince one person, this might all be all worth it. Not really though, this is a huge amount of work. Anyway, let's get on with it. Part 1, the Chris Houlihan Room. In November of 1991, Nintendo released Zelda no Densetsu Kamigami no Triforce in Japan, which translates into The Legend of Zelda Triforce of the Gods. This is the 3rd game in the Legend of Zelda series, with the prior 2 games being released in 1986 and 1987. The English language version of this 3rd game was titled The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and was released in America in April of 1992 and then in Europe in September of the same year. The game was a huge success, monumentally important. I don't know if I can understate the impact that this game has had on all of video games. It's still being played. You can go on Twitch right now and find maybe dozens of people live streaming it to hundreds of viewers. The game has multiple ports, re-releases, and sequels, even a direct follow-up on the Nintendo 3DS in 2013. The game is an action-adventure where you play as Link as he rescues the Princess Zelda and all of the Kingdom of Hyrule from the clutches of the wizard Aghanim and his evil puppeteer Ganon. You run around in a top-down perspective as little pink-haired Link, fighting monsters and journeying deep into caves and dungeons to amass powerful tools, pendants, keys, and crystals. It's a very good video game, and if this is the first time you've heard of it and you like video games, well, go and play it. It rules. In the years following its release, a number of folks who played the game stumbled on a very strange room that Link could fall into, but only under confusing and difficult to replicate situations. I remember, in the 90s, someone telling me about this strange room full of 45 blue rupees, which is the currency of Hyrule. When I asked how he'd gotten there, he told me it just kind of happened. And with the rise of the internet, more folks started discussing how they found this room on Usenet and message boards. And they would confer with each other, wondering what was going on with this room as they tried to figure out how to trigger Link's entry into it. The most notable thing about this room is the telepathy tile in the back, which, when Link triggers it, spawns some text on the screen. My name is Chris Houlihan. This is my top secret room. Keep it between us, okay? in every English language copy of the Super Nintendo game The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. If you manage to find your way into this room, this tile will say this exact text with this exact name: Chris Houlihan. One of the earliest ways I managed to find the entrance and confirm this room existed in my own copy of the game was via a method that involved Link dashing quickly using the Pegasus shoes, an item given to him by the sage Sahasrahla early in the game. I was told if you have Link start his journey in the sanctuary and dash with the Pegasus shoots with enough speed and precision, he could fall into a hole that normally leads you into the basement of Hyrule Castle, but done right would take him to the top secret room, the Chris Houlihan room. I spent a whole afternoon practicing, and I was eventually able to get there and make it work. It was incredible. Why did that work? What was this room for? And who was Chris Houlihan? I should note, this room exists in all copies of the game, but Chris Houlihan's name is only in the English language versions. In the Japanese version, the room says something that roughly translates to, "Here, it's the Chamber of Secrets. Keep it a secret from everyone else." In the updated Game Boy Advance port of the video game, there is currently no way to access the room outside of cheats or glitching the game, and the telepathic tile is gone as well, so there's no Chris Houlihan there. Many years after the discovery of Chris Houlihan and his top secret room, intrepid gamers decided to take a closer look as to what was going on within the game's code, and they discovered that the Chris Houlihan room is kind of a failsafe. In case the user tries to enter a room and triggers an error such that the game doesn't know exactly where to place Link. In that case, the game doesn't panic, it just drops Link into the Chris Houlihan room. And while around 5 pretty consistent methods have been found to get into the room, they require you to do a few things that trick the game into placing Link into a specific state before having him fall into a cave. Here's one of the most straightforward methods of getting into the Chris Houlihan room, if you've got a half hour and want to see it yourself. Fire up your English language copy of A Link to the Past. You could use a Super Nintendo, but this also works on the Wii Virtual Console and even the Switch and Switch 2 SNES Nintendo Classics editions. Start the game fresh, go and get your sword. Save Princess Zelda from prison under the castle. Journey to the east and complete the Eastern Palace, getting the Pendant of Courage and hopefully picking up a bomb or two along the way. You just need one bomb for this. Talk with Sahasrahla after beating the Eastern Palace to collect the Pegasus shoes. Now, save and quit. Start back up at the sanctuary. Journey south out of the sanctuary and go one screen west. Kill the guards since they're annoying to deal with. Head near the bottom of the screen and face up. Drop a bomb and let it explode, knocking Link south towards the edge of the screen. You will now be a few pixels from the bottom of the screen facing upwards. Start running with the Pegasus boots, and during the wind-up, press down so that Link runs with the Pegasus boots starting from the very bottom of the screen and therefore putting the game into a state it's not happy with. At this point, you need to make your way all the way around the castle and into the hole you initially used at the beginning of the game to get to Hyrule Castle's basement. You don't have to run or even be quick, you can bonk off walls. Just don't die, I guess, and you'll find that instead of dropping into the basement, you reach the Chris Houlihan room. There are all kinds of guides on other methods in case you want to go crazy, but for now, just know there's a room in every English language version of the monumental and important video game The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past that has some random person's name in it, and that name is Chris Houlihan. We are pretty sure we know how Chris Houlihan's name got into A Link to the Past, and it has to do with the publication Nintendo Power, a very popular magazine in the late 80s and 90s that provided hints, tricks, and advertisements for games on Nintendo's consoles. In the September-October 1990 edition of Nintendo Power, there's a full article discussing the role-playing game Final Fantasy, with a number of contests being advertised. One was a special bonus contest called the Warmech Challenge. Have you ever imagined yourself in an NES game? Well, this is your chance. If you meet Warmech, snap a photo of him and send it to the address below by October 15th, 1990. One winner will be randomly selected, and his or her name will be programmed into a future Nintendo game. Readers were tasked with finding an ultra-tough enemy, the Warmech, within Final Fantasy, taking a picture of the screen when they find the creature, and sending it in for a chance to be entered into the final drawing, with the winner getting their name programmed into a future Nintendo game. a few things. First, if you want to go back in time and win this contest, go ahead and fire up your copy of Final Fantasy. Play through almost the entire game and take your airship to the northeast, landing in the grassland below this expansive desert. Travel north to the Tower of Mirage and ascend the 3 floors, where you'll find a tile that transports you to the Flying Fortress. Make your way through the first 4 levels of the Flying Fortress, finding a transportation tile each time that allows you to travel between the levels until you get to the final level, where the Fiend of Wind, Tiamat, lives. This level is a long bridge crawling with enemies. You have some people say 4.7%, some people say like 1 out of 100, but you get a fairly small probability of, on one of your random encounters, finding the war mech. Take a picture of your screen, send it in by October 15th, 1990, and you'll get entered into the drawing. Good luck. It is thought that Chris Houlihan won this contest, since his name is in A Link to the Past. In a few subsequent publications, he is mentioned as having won this contest. Here, in volume 105 of Nintendo Power, when reporting on another contest winner, an editor writes, in 1992, Nintendo Power contest winner Chris Houlihan secured his place in gaming history by having his name featured in a hidden area in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I can tell you now that Chris Houlihan didn't win this contest. His dad did, and he provided his son's name instead of his own. Good dad. And I guess, technically, this does make Chris the winner since his name was put in A Link to the Past. I should also note that the winner wasn't officially listed in subsequent issues of Nintendo Power. They just didn't specify who won this contest, unlike many of the other contests they ran in the publication, and unlike what is specified in the fine print for this contest. Anyway, this is all the information that has been known about the Chris Houlihan room for like the 3 decades since the release of this video game. For 30 years, people have been debating who Chris Houlihan was, and he's never really come forward to say, hey, it's me. And there are a lot of Chris Houlihans. It's not the most common name, but there's enough that a Google search will find quite a few. Please do not contact them. Let me be clear. Do not try to contact people because you think they're a contest winner from the early 90s. I remember being someone who thought, maybe one day I'll be going about my life and someone will introduce themselves as Chris Houlihan and I'll just start to cry out of overwhelming emotion. Part 2. Someone introduces themselves as Chris Houlihan. A few years ago around Christmas, my mom told me that her real estate agent had a weird last name, Houlihan. Note, I've changed his profession so as to not dox Chris. He is not a real estate agent. Or is he? Anyway, I heard my mom mention the last name Houlihan and my ears perked up. And I asked her what this real estate agent's first name was. And she said, Chris. And I flipped out because I'm a big dumb nerd, as is patently obvious. I told her a much abridged version of the story I just relayed in part 1, and my mom's reaction was, oh, well, it's got to be him. And I was, and still am, a lot more skeptical than her, and said, no, there are so many Chris Houlihans. This is probably just a coincidence. And then she just asked him the next time she saw him. And he said yes, and told his own version of the story. His dad was a big video game fan, won the contest, put his son's name in instead of his own. This, my mom said, was proof, because why would he lie about something so stupid? Well, it's a neat story, but again, I'm more skeptical than her. And so we had many arguments where I said I need more proof, and she told me to believe him and to believe her. Many, many arguments. Too many for something so stupid. Eventually, she sees Chris again and brings up the fight she's having with her adult son about needing proof, and he says, well, they have the letter they were sent somewhere, probably in a box in the garage or the attic of his childhood home. And my mom says, and I quote, well, I'll come over and search through the boxes and find it. And Chris correctly responds, and again, direct quote, no thank you. I met Chris once. He was at an event I was also at. My parents flagged him over and we talked. Nice guy. Not a video game player. Very little interest or excitement about having his name in a video game. When I met him, though, I was of the mindset that he was a guy named Chris Houlihan who had a story that needed some sort of proof. And that hypothetically, there was a box somewhere with that proof, a magic letter that would somehow show that among all the folks named Chris Houlihan, he was the Chris Houlihan. My mom and I have had so many fights about this. I'm someone who is skeptical as a career, as a livelihood. And my mom was just so upset with me that I couldn't just believe this one thing. But without proof, it was a fun story. Because my mom didn't need a real estate agent forever, she and Chris Houlihan parted ways. And that was that. No more Chris Houlihan. Just fights between her and I. He's the Chris Houlihan. I don't believe it. He's the Chris Houlihan. I don't believe it. Fight, fight, fight. Now, the only way this would change is if he decided on his own to dig through the boxes in his attic. Part 3. Chris Houlihan digs through boxes in his attic. A few years later, my mom gets an email from Chris Houlihan with a JPEG, a photograph of the letter he managed to find in a box in his attic. She sends it to me. And now I'm going to show it to you. September 19th, 1991. Dear Chris, I'm sorry we haven't been in touch with you for a while. Unfortunately, it isn't quite as easy as it sounds to make additions to new games. Early last winter, we included your name in the World Cup soccer game, which I have enclosed, but only your first name was used. On the US team, you'll find Chris. We decided that was not nearly enough. Since then, we've looked at the possibility of using one of the characters in Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, or Metroid 2, both for Game Boy, but the only characters available to be given names were hideous ogres. As you can imagine, we didn't want to immortalize the name of Houlihan as a monster. So what are we doing now? Well, we have contacted Mr. Miyamoto in Kyoto, Japan. He's the guy who created the character of Mario and designed most of the Mario and Zelda games. It is our hope that your name will be given to a good character in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which, by the way, is the name of the future Super NES Zelda game. Other possibilities include a radical new game called Lunar Chase and a Super Mario World sequel for the NES based on the Yoshi character. As soon as we have confirmation on this matter, we will let you know. Very truly yours, Nintendo of America Inc., Scott Pelland, Nintendo Power Editor. P.S. The real name of Zelda 3 mentioned above is top secret information, so please don't talk to any nosy reporters or industry spies. This blew my damn mind. There's so much here. First, the letter right off the bat looks legit from the image I was sent. It didn't look like an obvious forgery or Photoshop. It was supposedly written by someone named Scott Pelland, who was indeed an editor at Nintendo Power. He's listed in the same issue where the contest was initially announced. Second, it laid out a story that Chris's name was actually put into a separate game by the time of this writing, September of 1991, a full 2 months before the Japanese launch of A Link to the Past. But they wanted the contest winner to feel like they really won something. So they were going to see if they could get his name into a game, referred to the postscript as Zelda 3. But here, they've told him the American name for the game a full 7 months early. There's also a reference to Lunar Chase, an American version of the Japanese Game Boy game X, which was canceled before release. X, a space combat game, was an early game with 3D visuals and was developed by Argonaut Software led by Dylan Cuthbert of Star Fox fame. But the American port, Lunar Chase, was canceled. And in the letter, there's a reference potentially to Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, which wouldn't be released until 1995 and hadn't even gone into production when the letter was written. Maybe he's referring to the SNES game Yoshi's Cookie, but I don't know if that would be considered a sequel to Super Mario World, and it was developed by TOS and not really by Nintendo, and actually I'm even boring myself at this point, I will stop. The letter did make one huge claim we could explore. Was Chris's name in the game that Scott Pelland refers to as World Cup Soccer? Well, unfortunately, World Cup Soccer isn't a game, and I know he's actually referring to Nintendo World Cup, which was published by Nintendo but originally developed by Technos Japan as part of their Kunio-kun series, which also included Renegade, River City Ransom, Super Dodgeball, and Crash and the Boys Street Challenge. You can all tell these games are part of the same series because they have similar looking player sprites. Anyway, the NES port of World Cup Soccer was released in May of 1990 in Japan and December of 1990 in North America. This is a little concerning already since the contest was closed in October of 1990, remember. And if you load up World Cup Soccer and look at the USA team, you see these players. Tony, Dave, probably Davey, Brian, Terry, Mark, Don, Phil, and Fred. No Chris. Bummer. Is the letter a fake then? Well, there's a Game Boy port of World Cup Soccer, which was released in the US in June of 1991. Let's take a look at that. Similar to the NES game, there's a US team. And the US team features the players Tony, Dave, Brian, Mark, Don, Phil, Fred, and Chris. Chris. Chris Houlihan. He's in 2 games. He's in one of the most important video games ever made, and he's in Nintendo World Cup for the Game Boy, a copy of which was enclosed with the letter sent to Chris Houlihan as a gift. Also, side note, I'm so sorry for Terry, who missed the cut and get on that team. All you Terry heads out there, I see you. This discovery was so incredible to me, because now, instead of this being a story, it's either the truth, and this is in fact the Chris Houlihan, or someone has executed an incredible, very well-researched long con for me and me alone. Someone found the exact correct video games that came out at the exact correct times when the name Chris was somehow the only difference in these games. They had found authentic-looking letterhead, wrote the letter in that golly gee style that's perfect for a video game magazine editor in the early 90s, and then provided it only to me and never released this letter to anyone else. Why would someone go through all that trouble? Why? Maybe you're in the comments right now being like, oh, well, maybe you made this up. Maybe this is a con that you're doing. But why would I? What would I gain by doing this? I reached out to Scott Pelland and sent him the letter inquiring about his authenticity. He wrote back, "Hi, Kevin. I think the note is authentic, although I don't have a direct recollection of it. The facts regarding Chris, his dad, and the contest as you have stated them seem correct as well. I recall there being a delay in getting Chris's name into a game, and we had to work with Nintendo to get it into A Link to the Past. The fact that the note was from me also suggests that it's authentic, since I ran the contest in those days. Yours, Scott." This response makes sense. This is like 30 years ago from a guy who ran every contest each month. Why would he remember the weird details about one specific contest? What's funny is that I doubt there are any contests from Nintendo Power with as much scrutiny as this specific one. I could be wrong. Okay, so to recap. In September-October of 1990, Nintendo Power Magazine puts out a contest where, if you took a picture of the rare Warmech enemy in the NES video game Final Fantasy and sent that photo in, you could get entered into a drawing where the winner would have their name put into a video game. The winner of that contest was a man who asked that his son's name, Chris Houlihan, be used instead of his own, and initially, Nintendo put Chris's name into the Game Boy port of the soccer game Nintendo World Cup as a member of the US team. Rest in peace, Terry. Nintendo Power and their editor Scott Pelland writes a letter to Chris Houlihan apologizing for the delay, letting him know that his name was in the Game Boy game, and indicating that they're in talks with Nintendo to somehow have Chris's name featured in what was to be the 3rd game in the Zelda series, A Link to the Past. They were granted approval, and the US localization team likely adjusted the text for a telepathy tile in a failsafe room in the game that the user can only gain access to if the game doesn't know where else to put Link, and it's eventually discovered by thousands and thousands of players who wonder who Chris Houlihan is. And now we know. He's just some guy. He isn't interested in glory, he doesn't really care about the name being used in Nintendo World Cup or Link to the Past. He's just out there in the world, living his life. He's not a fraud, he's not a fake, it's not a fake name Nintendo built and put into the game to trick people. All of your theories were wrong. He's a real guy. And his name is in 2 games, which is kind of fun. So all of this entire video, all this is to say, really, this was the point of the whole video. My mom was right, and I was wrong. Thanks for watching. Gosh, she is going to be insufferable after hearing this. I should not have recorded this to a video. I should probably, editor, you should take that part out. Take the part out where I say my mom was right and I was wrong. I'm right on like so many other things than her. I'm right on so many other things. But she was right on this thing. And so that is important for her to hear. Edit that part out. Maybe we just put credits so that you can't hear me. Maybe we should just focus on the kitty. We should all focus on the kitty. What a group of